Yo, it's definitely Clout Church TV, man. We back up in this thing again. You dig? It's fame or clout, man. Y'all get in tune, man. Follow us on all social media platforms, man. Today we got a special guest, man. Tommy Walker, man. Tommy Walker's in the building. And you know, Tommy Walker, he be in the knowing of the know, man. If y'all don't know, man, legal representation for a lot of guys, helping them get out of prison. You know what I mean? In regards to, working on that case. He's not a lawyer, but he's definitely an advocate. He's a paralegal. He's someone in the know of a lot of things, bro. So, and I remember Tommy one time you told me, I was like, why you don't be a lawyer? And you said that the reason being is because you able to cross jurisdictions, go from state to state with it, and be able to help a lot of more individuals. So, hey Tommy, if you can just share your social media, let them know a little bit about you, bro, just in case people didn't know.
Okay, my name is Tommy Walker, and I own an organization called Second Chance for Real, the number four. Um, and we help people that's incarcerated. We help people that's in pretrial stages and stuff like that, and so on. And we work on a lot of high-profile, complex cases that a lot of attorneys don't like to work on because we do the legwork. Most of the attorneys don't take the type of cases we work on because they involve a lot of time, a lot of research, and a lot of resources. And most people can't afford to pay those type of resources to an attorneys. So attorneys can't do an adequate job usually without our help or without our assistance. So we help them. We do the footwork. We go to the court system sometimes for the clients. We drop off paperwork. We check and see what the status is of their case, whether or not the court system received the paperwork, whether or not the court system is reviewing the paperwork, whether or not the case is pending, or if the person needs transcripts or certain documents that they don't have. We also have a part of our organization, a notary service. We notarize affidavits. We get affidavits, and we do investigations in the cases and stuff like that and so on. But I've been doing this for maybe about a total of 30 years now. While I was a federal prisoner, now I'm out. And I do it now working with and for lawyers, but I have my own organization with individuals working with me. And we do a lot of work. We do a lot of work for lawyers that call us for assistance. And we also do a lot of work with inmates that want us to keep a track of the lawyers and keep an eye on the lawyers and make sure the lawyers are doing the right thing and making sure that the lawyers are not misleading them or giving them information that's not relevant to their case. Like for example, last week, that's come off of beating a very big case. Actually, is a personal case too. Is my son. My son was on trial for first degree murder, and we were able to win that case. Not guilty on all counts, and that's something very rare nowadays. And I believe that a lot of that our success came from me being able to educate my son and trying to let him know what to expect from the government, what to expect from the court system, and to read, understand, and follow the rules and not just the facts of the case, or not just arguing you didn't commit the crime, you didn't do the crime, but just understanding how the process and the procedures work. I think that was a great deal. He had an excellent lawyer too that did an excellent job as far as advocating for him, working hard, and putting forth a strong argument and not just agreeing with what the government or the state had to offer against him.
No, for sure, for sure. And you speaking about like, a lot of people don't know like how you freed yourself. You know what I'm saying? You was in the law library, you did the leg work, and it's a particular case that just came up. Big U. I think we spoke on it before, in regards to his indictment. And
Right.
right now he wants to represent himself. Is that something the feds allow you to do? And my
Well,
question really is like, is that a good thing for him?
it's a constitutional right. It's one of your seven. I think it's seven structural errors now. And that's one of your structural errors. You have the right to represent yourself if you choose to. The biggest problem in the federal system is that they like to control everything. So that might be a problem for him if he doesn't understand the rules and the procedures and what he can do and what he cannot do. Okay, it's a difference between fighting your case and then understanding the rules as to what you can do and what you cannot do. That's a different ball game, and it's going to be very challenging. I actually represented myself at trial too, but it wasn't by choice. It was because I had a lawyer who was a family member. He was fighting very hard on the case, and of course, the feds, they did what they do best. They removed the lawyer off the case because they didn't want him to represent me. They actually arrested his sister, made his sister a member of the conspiracy, which created a conflict of interest, and therefore the court removed him from the case. And I was forced to represent myself because I didn't trust any other attorneys to hold my best interest. I know it was a high profile case, and the most high profile cases like Big U case, like Diddy case, you're just not going to get a fair shake. You know what I'm saying? The government is out to win these cases, and when it comes to winning these cases, they're master at manipulating the facts and the premises of the case to justify the conclusion. And what I mean by that is that if you look at a case, for example, a person might start out with a lawyer, so he's an even field. Then the court or the government might do something that will force that lawyer off the case or have that defendant remove that lawyer from the case. Now that defendant is without a lawyer. Now the field is not even anymore. But they have the ability to manipulate the facts, and I'll explain a little bit to how they're doing it in Diddy's case, and then if you guys got any questions, I'll try to answer them or address them without going into the facts of these individual cases and talking about these individual cases and what's going on, what I believe and what I don't believe about the
Right.
cases.
So, like you said, that's kind of like a good thing. But like, so a lot of people on social media, they saying that basically he's only doing it so he can see the full discovery. Like when it comes to that, what I'm saying, I'm not so privy on that information. Like when you got a lawyer, don't you have the right to see the discovery,
Right,
or do
right.
the lawyer holds
He
things
have
back?
he have the right to see the discovery, but here's the catch: when you're dealing with a high profile case like his case and like Diddy case that involves a lot of threats, danger to the witnesses, they don't want him to see the records because of addresses and names. They're afraid that it creates a public safety factor, and they don't want him to have that information. In some of the cases that I work on, also they do what's called a protected, I forgot, Jesus, I can't even think of it right now. It's called a protected seal or something like that. And when I'm working with the attorneys, I can't see the records. I have to go by what the attorneys tell me, and that makes it very difficult for me to work on those particular cases, because you need to see those facts, because the attorney might agree with something and you don't necessarily have to agree with it, and that attorney could be wrong. you know so they do that, like I said, to seal the records. Even if he decide to represent himself, they're probably going to dedact a lot of the records, black out names, black out addresses, and stuff like that.
So they
For
still would do it, even regardless if he representing himself or not. They still would probably do it redacted.
right, right, names, addresses, and stuff like that, and so on. He's probably not going to get some of the information until the day of trial or to the eve of trial. You
So
know,
would that be like a chance for appeal in the future because it's misrepresentation? Like
no, it won't be, because
all that
he would
information.
have to he would have to show the relevancy of having that name or that address. You understand what I'm saying? And once he shows that, then he's going to have to also show, by not having that name or that address, how did it prejudice him? How did it prejudice the trial? You follow what I'm saying?
Right.
And that's going to be difficult. That's a difficult component for defendant to establish after the case is over. How he was prejudiced by not having somebody's address. You understand what I'm saying? What would be the relevant to have a witness's address or witness's name? We're giving you the facts. We're telling you that CI1 said the following: CI1 lives in this town, but we're not giving you the address. So what would be the need to have the address, and so on?
No, I got you. I got you. So just another question in regards to that before we move on. So you know, like when they said that Big Hugh was facing 600 years, like 600 years, is that true? Like that he could be facing 600 years on all these different charges? I think he was like 40 something charges.
Right. Well, see, it depends on how they manipulate the sentencing scheme. And what I mean by that is a lot of the counts, right, should actually be consolidated and run together. Okay. But if they choose and they feel that he's a headache and they don't want him to enter the street again, instead of taking 5 charges, that would be um, 20 years apiece.
Yeah.
Okay, what they'll do is they'll take those same 5 charges and they'll run them wild, and that'll turn it into 100 years instead of doing 20 years for 5 charges running concurrently.
Wow. Wow. Yo, Rich, you got a question in regards to this?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Tommy, did he think there was an opportunity for Big U to work with the government to lessen his sentence?
Yeah, I think he spoke on that before. He said it is a chance because it's somebody always bigger than the next person.
Right. Well,
okay, I didn't hear that part. I'm sorry.
Right. You know, it is always somebody that's bigger than the next person, but you know, that depends on the government strategy. If Big U can't offer any evidence that's going to lead to somebody bigger or equal to, or even it could just be other crimes, other murders, other conspiracies, other RICOs, you know, they'll take that and they'll give some benefits for that. But you know, I don't know if he's that type of person. I don't believe he is. You know what I'm saying? You know, I just don't see it in his particular case.
You got another one, Rich?
No, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that a lot of people, you know, on social media, they definitely addressing in regards to, okay, him being the age that he is, and you know, does that change things? And you know, that's a good question for you as well, because you ain't been in the federal penitentiary, and you ain't seen some guys that's older. Does that change things on like far as moral value or what they think their moral should be, far as you know, say, you know, when I was 20, you know, it's a no snitch policy, but then when I'm close to 60, it's like I gotta go home.
Well, that's certainly an aggravating and a mitigating factor that's considered, and a lot of times that's one of the factors that's used by law enforcement, by the prosecutors. That's the story that they tell you. That's what they're going to preach to you. That's what the lawyers will preach to you when they want you to plead guilty. They want to tell you, for example, you're 60 years old now. They're trying to give you 20 years. There's no life. Don't take it. It's not worth it. You understand what I'm saying? Because by the time you get out of 80, you're going to come out in a wheelchair. And then you have some people that say, well, you're a young man. 20 years is not going to hurt you. Go in there and educate yourself. Learn what you got to learn. Change your life. This is your opportunity to change your life and turn your life around. You know, those are definitely factors that
law enforcement is against you. Wow, that's crazy. I didn't even know that. And so like moving on to like the Diddy case, you know, even with the Big U. So let's go back to the Big U just for 1 second. So apparently his lawyer basically pulled out on his case. Mm-hmm. His lawyer said that he couldn't represent him for far some things that I guess was going on with his client. Like when you have a high profile case like that, is that normal? Because I even seen it in Diddy case allegedly. I think one of his lawyers backed out as well. And like, what does that mean when a person backs out? Does that mean you don't got a shot?
Yeah, see, a lot of times you have to think about it from a lawyer's point of view. Okay, if a lawyer, especially in a high profile case, and let's try to change your shoes and put on your business shoes. In a high profile case, if a lawyer is looking at the discovery, he's looking at the evidence, and he feels that his client is going to be convicted, he doesn't want that mark against him. You understand what I'm saying? He might pull out because he doesn't want to take the loss. He might stay in it if he feels that he can get his client a good deal, if he can get his client to plead guilty, and it's considered a win. If your client is facing 100 years and you can get him to plead guilty to 10 years, for most lawyers, that's a win. That's a victory. If your client is facing the death penalty and you can get them to take a plea to a life sentence, that's a win for most lawyers, because they're looking at it as, I saved your life, or you're not going to spend the rest of your life in jail. So to them, they're looking at that as a victory. But if you have a lawyer, he's looking at something and he's saying this case is almost impossible to win, and me communicating with my client is not getting me nowhere, I can't get him the reason, I can't get him to look at the facts, he's going to end up being there for life. And then in most cases, not saying that it's always the lawyer's fault, but clients have the habit of blaming lawyers for their mistakes. They have the habit of blaming people that they seeking help and assistance for their mistakes, for a problem that they put themselves into.
Gotcha.
Hey, I got a question, Chuck, whenever you get a chance.
Go ahead, bro.
Hey, what's up, Tommy? So kind of with that in mind, what would it look like? Because there's some rumors that it wasn't actually the lawyer dropping, but Big U fired him. So if we were to follow that scenario, I guess, like, would it make sense, or what would it look like if he fired the lawyer? Is there a strategy behind, or like, what do you ascertain from that?
Well, sometimes people fire their lawyers because of lack of communication, because lawyers are not coming to see them, lawyers are not communicating, lawyers are leaving them left in the dark and the blind. They don't know what's going on. They don't know what's happening in their particular cases. It's very common now that I see in the work that I'm doing, that defendants go through like 2 or 3 lawyers before they even reach a trial. And it's because they're trying to find the best lawyer that is willing to listen to them, to understand their side of the story, or to not always take or side with the government. So it's a possibility he fired his lawyer because his lawyer wasn't listening to him, or his lawyer and him just didn't agree on the facts. A lot of times a person want a lawyer to listen to them and follow along on their theory or their story, but when the lawyer is looking at the facts or the evidence of the case, it's not matching what he's saying. You know what I'm saying? So that creates a conflict.
Right. And one theory is that from some of the people that were in that courtroom, they're saying that Big U's strategy is essentially to represent himself so he can have access to his paperwork and learn who some of the confidential informers might be, who, like, what information they have on him. Does that make sense to you, or have you seen
that really
went on that road before?
That really don't make too much sense, and I'll tell you why. Because if he decides to go to trial, he's going to have access to the informants, because all of the information that's being given, he's going to know who it is, where it came from, and so on. You know what I'm saying? The government or the state is afraid of the fact that if we give him the access or the information too early, he might threaten these witnesses. These witnesses might disappear. They might not show up to the trial, and that's what he's up against. Okay. In most cases, when you're dealing with discovery information, some days you don't get it until that witness come to trial and testify that day. You might get it that morning, and you have to go through it that morning real quick, or that afternoon. Or you might get it the day before, the night before. So you don't really have the time to adjust other than read the transcripts, read the paperwork, and see what you're dealing with and stuff like that. But they're going to definitely keep him away from that. Like I said, what is the relevancy of having a witness name and address if they just call him John Doe? If they call everybody John Doe and say they lived on Main Street in New York, why would
right.
you need this address?
Sorry, go ahead, finish that thought.
No, I was going to say, why would you need the address or the name of that person unless there's some type of foul play that you're considering, or some type of strategy?
That's actually a good kind of segue into this, right? So is it logistically, or is it possible for him to represent himself, get access to the documents, and then retroactively hire another lawyer, right? After is that possible?
Yeah, that's possible, because you have, again, let's go back to structural errors. You have the right to choose to have counsel of your choice. Okay. But the only thing that he can't do, he got to make sure under that type of strategy that he doesn't interfere with the court schedule. You understand what I'm saying? But he can have a counsel. He might decide, or he can say at any time, listen, this is too complicated for me. I can't handle it. I think I'll be better off with an attorney. And then the court would have to give him time or to adjust or to have an attorney appointed. But if it goes into the court schedule, like say, for example, if the court got trial scheduled for next week and he tries that strategy, it's not going to work.
Right. Makes sense.
Hey, Tommy, can I ask you a question? I'd like to ask you a question. If you had to take an educated guess of what you would perceive a reason why Big U would take the strategy of going per se, could you see a reason why?
Well, see, a lot of times people, and I'm not just putting this under Big U's name, right? People have a personal element when somebody tells on them. They just want to know. They want to know who it is. And in his case, I believe that the reason is he wants to know who it is so he can put his strategy and his defense together to fight it. And in most cases, that's not going to work, because when you're dealing with the government, again, they have the ability to manipulate the facts and keep you at a disadvantage. And one of those disadvantages that he's at right now, and has already started the process of not giving him that information, is the fact that he's in the same situation as Diddy. He's in jail, pre-trial, without a bail. He's not going to get no bail. This way, he doesn't have the ability to go visit people, to threaten people, to talk to people, to go visit the lawyer, to play a part in his case, to assist in his case, and to make sure that the lawyer is doing the job. He has to just sit there in that jail cell and hope that the proper and adequate information come to him where he can assist or play a part in his particular case. That might be one of the reasons why he got rid of the lawyer, because he's seeing that he can't find out any information that he had. One of the biggest problems that most people have when you get incarcerated, they have to realize that they lose full control of their situation, helping, aiding, and assisting in their own situation and fighting for their own life. And they have to be smart enough to find people that they trust and people that they can depend on and rely upon to do the job that needs to be done.
Hey, I just want to add on top of that, as far as with the characteristics of Big U and that type of person, wanting to be in total control, not wanting anybody to be able to check him, or just being at the head, the pinnacle of a situation so long. I think that's playing into his thought process of wanting to represent himself, because he just doesn't want to let go of the reins.
Right. I agree.
I have a question. In the Feds, do you have to have a similar to like a competency hearing before you represent yourself?
Yeah, they had, it's called a Ferretta hearing, and what they do is they test you out to see where your educational level is, whether or not you understand English, whether or not you can read and stuff like that, whether or not you have the ability to represent yourself. But let me say this here, that doesn't mean anything, because you have jokers. And when I say that, I'm saying you can even talk about attorneys. You have attorneys, you have paralegal clerks, you have pro se litigants, you have highly educated people that just don't understand the law because of the manipulation of the facts and the wording that they use, and the whole process. Like, if you think about it, I don't know if any of you guys ever been arrested or arraigned on a charge. When they bring you in, they might give you a name, and I'll just use my name. They'll say Tommy Walker has been indicted in a 10-count indictment. He's been charged with violation of 2182-UCC 444. They start naming out these numbers. The average person don't know what those numbers mean. You know what I'm saying? So you lost from
I understand that in totality. That's why my next question was going to be co-counsel. The reason why I ask these questions, I've been locked up and convicted on the state level, and I represented myself also to get vindicated. So I understand that through experience and through the legal system. But when it comes to the federal level, representing yourself can you get assigned co-counsel, or will you get assigned co-counsel?
It's actually called standby counsel, and what he does is he stands by you while you represent yourself. If you got any questions, the court give you a chance to lean over to him, get advice, get recommendations as to what to do.
To make sure your constitutional rights is safeguarded to your layman technically.
Right, exactly. But at the end of the day, even with standby counsel, the final choice is always going to be your choice. Yours. Right.
Yeah, I understand that, but I know in a regular sense, and probably especially now in a high profile case, they want to make sure that they cover themselves well. They cover themselves as well. Meaning the people, the feds.
Right.
The government.
That's what the government is going to do, regardless of what he says. The government is going to appoint a standby counsel, and the government is going to inform him that you can use him if you want to. You don't have to use him, but he's here for your help and your assistance. But that's only to protect the government, so that if he goes to the appeal stage and he says he was handicapped, he didn't know what is going on, then the court can say, well, we gave you standby counsel. He was there. He was available throughout your whole trial. You just chose not to use him.
Makes a lot of sense right there. So like when it come down to this Diddy situation, I'm pretty sure you've seen the news and different people testifying. You had Kid Cudi, you had Cassie up there recently. Now in regards to Cassie, like, the way that they going with the questioning is like, is it a chance that she could have wanted to do these things, or is it all coerced, like meaning that he groomed her, things of that nature?
See, when you're looking at things like that, right? The only one who will ever know for true is Diddy and Cassie. Right. Okay, you understand what I'm saying? Now, what the government did was they put, or the state, they put together a bunch of little pieces to show that there's a highly probable likelihood that it was Diddy and not Cassie, in my opinion. Okay. But the key factor that's being overlooked in Diddy's case is that, for example, the underlying crime, and I'm not saying that he's just had one crime. When you say the underlying crime, you're talking about the controllable crime, the crime that carries all the time, the crime that they focus on the most is the sex trafficking crime, right? Now, if you listen to the testimony and the evidence, right, they haven't shown too much evidence pertaining to that particular count, but they're doing an excellent job of showing that Diddy is a bad person or a bad guy, and therefore he should go to jail. But when you look at the elements of the crime that needs to be proven, they haven't really established that 100%, in my opinion. They're establishing some of the bad things he did, the beating, the kicking, but a lot of those charges, like even with Cassie and the testimony that she gave in the hotel, don't overlook the fact he's not charged with that. You understand what I'm saying? And I said that to say, as I said earlier, a trial, and if anybody have any misunderstanding about what I'm saying with this here, just ask me and I'll try to answer the question. A trial, under my definition, is made up of three things: facts, premises, and a conclusion. The conclusion, guilty or not guilty. In these particular cases, what happens, and you're going to see it if you think about some of the cases that you've probably already seen and witnessed, is the government has a strong ability to manipulate the facts and the premises to justify the conclusion. And what I mean by that is, you're arrested for one thing, but they show them proof and facts of something totally different. And all of that stuff is designed to paint a picture of you, a bad picture of you, so that if the jury don't believe that you did do it, then they're saying, okay, well, maybe he should have went to jail for beating Cassie up in his hallway, so I'm going to find him guilty. It tilts the scale of justice. You have a case that I'm working on now. Kenneth McGriff, from the Supreme team, right? He has an excellent documentary that's coming out, and I would advise you guys to watch it It should probably be out hopefully in another 30 days or so. And in his case, that's the small taste. He started out with a lawyer. He started out bringing to the court's attention that he wanted to testify because he was the only one who can contradict one of the key witnesses' testimony against him. And he had certain issues that he wanted to address. But the court took all of those things from him. They didn't allow him to testify. They took his lawyer from him. Okay, gave him a court-appointed lawyer, froze all his money so that he couldn't pay for a private lawyer. So these things tilt the scale against him. So he can't have a fair trial. He can't really show the case the way he wants to show it. And this happens in a lot of cases, in a lot of these Fed cases. And a lot of times this happens because I hear people say so many times, which I disagree with, that when the Feds come get you, they got you. Okay. That is so far from the truth. If you look at most of these cases and you look at some of the people that's testifying against Diddy, some of the things that's being said, and some of the other cases that you probably witnessed, 90% of those people that's coming to testify or that's testifying, they came into play after his arrest, after his arraignment, after his indictment. So they was brought in and sold to the government or brought and sold to the state to be witnesses against. You see how many people are coming up now against Diddy? And some because they don't want to be involved. They don't want to be dragged into the case. You know, this stuff is kind of complicated, man, and it's kind of hard to sometimes explain it in a half an hour or 20 minutes. But like I said, it's almost like, let me put it this way. I'm gonna try to bring it in layman terms. Let's say you're about to play in a basketball game. It's for the championship, right? Your team, you ready to go, and there's another team that you got to play against. But the other team gets the option to tell you who can start and who can play on your team and who can't play. What does that do with your chances of winning now? It decreases your chances of winning. And that's what the federal government does when they try these cases, in my opinion. They manipulate the facts. They allow evidence to come in that shouldn't come in. Then they tell a jury to ignore it, to act like it doesn't exist and don't consider it. And that can't happen. It's almost like if you have a kid and you're about to go out with your wife or your husband and you hire a babysitter and the babysitter's at your house and I come by your house and I say, hey, who's this guy here? And they say, oh, that's the babysitter. And I say, ain't that the guy who was who recently was just charged with manipulating or molesting the little kids down the block? And then you say, man, never mind, forget that, man. I'm not sure if that's the guy or not, man. Just forget about it, man. Let's go head out, you and your wife, and have a good time. You and your wife can't go out now and have a good time. You understand what I'm saying? You need to know who this guy is. You need to know a little bit more about him. You know what I'm saying? You're probably going to cancel the trip and stay home with your kids. But that's pretty much the way the federal system works.
I don't have a question. I have more like a I don't know, a statement.
Mm-hmm.
The way I guess I would like your opinion. The way I see the legal system is like it's two words I use a lot: interpretation and the way you perceive stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like whoever tells the best story. When I say that, meaning this. To me, when it comes to law, technically, it doesn't matter when you go to trial with a jury of your peers. It don't matter if you're guilty or you're innocent. It matters who put on the best presentation, who tells the best story, who performs the best. Now, just like you were speaking about, and just like common sense tell you, the playing field got to be even. You know what I mean? If you at a disadvantage with doing investigation, et cetera, yeah. But let's say somebody like a Puff, he happened to be, he happened to have the convenience of having the maximum resources possible.
Right.
So it's like, again, who tells the best story? Because in common sense, a legal person assumes that police don't mess with you for nothing. So they assume that you ain't going to trial for nothing. You had to be guilty of something. Just like you explaining, like I know on the state levels, like a lesser included offense. They might say, well, he ain't that bad, but he should be put away, but not forever. You feel what I'm saying? And,
right.
as jury, that's not their authority or their duty to do that. All they supposed to know about technically is, or give an opinion is if a person's guilty or innocent. But they're human, so they're going to assume things. They're going to do what the average mind does. The same way, like we all know, when you have a sidebar, right? And certain things, or you have motions beforehand, certain things are supposed to be brought up in front of the jury. I could be the DA or the defense, and I blur it out. Approach the bench, ask the jury, strike that from the record. How you gonna strike from the record when I already heard it? So I'm already human. It's in the back of my mind. How hard is it's gonna be extremely hard for me to make a decision without me including that in the decision. I already heard it. But a person to swear on a stack of Bibles that they still going to do that, and you feel what I'm saying? So
it can't do it in reality. I got you.
In reality, they can't really do it. And the last thing is, I don't feel. I know it's the way, but you have to be abreast and you have to be on point at every stage. When I say every stage, from when you got arrested, from when you get arrested until you go to trial, until you come back home, you got to be on point, and you got to be abreast of everything at every step. And like you said before, one of my number one things is, as long as I learn the rules and the regulations and the procedures of anything, I can do anything within the rims of my reality. I done proved it before. I had a life sentence. I proved it. But if you don't know the rules, you can't move right. You might step on what you call that shit, a mine, and blow the fuck up. But if you know the rules, you know how to move, you know how to maneuver, and you play by the rules. You know what I mean? If you're doing it right, you can crack the code.
You're 100% correct. Listen, my brother, that's one of the things that I teach in my class, rules and procedures. I tell them, forget about the facts of your case, because it's the rules and the procedures that can get you out of the mess, even if the facts are against you 100%. You understand what I'm saying? And to go back to what you're saying is, man, listen, you 100 on that. This is what I learned through my definition, right? The court system. So let's take that word, emphasis on the word court, right?
I love it.
When you play basketball, you play on a basketball court, right?
Court, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, referee.
You play tennis. When you play tennis, you play on a tennis court, right?
Yeah.
All of those things involve physical challenges, one person against the other, a team against another team, and so on. And that's the same thing in the court system, but the difference is, going exactly what you're saying, is you're playing with word games now. Whoever manipulates the facts, whoever manipulates the words, whoever manipulates the premises, whoever manipulates the facts to get the conclusion that they're looking for. It doesn't matter if you're guilty or not. You know what I'm saying? When you sit there and if you witness the trial and you watch the way people high five and glory, it's about the win. It's not about whether or not the person was guilty or not guilty.
Oh.
It's that little challenge that they just had.
And that's how I learned everything by, unfortunately, when I first got arrested, I was illiterate, like legally.
Mm-hmm.
I learned everything from the basics, from the bottom, and go up. So therefore, I can't be wrong. You feel what I'm saying? And that's what I do. That's what I've done with words, with my communication. And doing that, I did the same thing with law. I'm talking about every level, statutory, procedural, whatever. I even do it with dissent. You know what I mean? I know how to take a dissent and use it. You know what I mean? Because that's what you got to do. You know what I mean? I know about like geographical jurisdictions. You know what I mean? Physical jurisdiction. It's all types of stuff to play with, because everything goes back to the beginning, to the Constitution, which is the organic legal system of our country. And it was manipulated and it's trash. We know that through regular history if you educate on a certain level. You feel what I'm saying? And then when you go legally, it's like, it leaves you dumbfounded. You know who Robert Wright is, right?
No, name doesn't sound familiar, but go ahead.
The brother from Jersey that had a life conviction.
Oh yeah, I know you're talking about. I know you're talking about
848 law.
Right.
All right. He's like legally, he's one of my idols legally. Coming from an urban or a person on the wrong side of the fence from a legal lifestyle. What he done was like astronomical. You feel what I'm saying now? If you're familiar with him in the legal aspect, you know, man, it's a I call it a rumor or folklore or whatever revolved around his case, right? One is he beat it legally, right? Two is that allegedly he know about the redemption. You feel what I'm saying? And they don't want to make case law out the redemption because I read this before in a famous case in New York. Is a legal terminology, open a floodgate, open up a legal floodgate because it'll let too many people out about it. You feel what I'm saying? Which they can't interpret it as retroactive or not. They had the same issue in New York State under the brave indifference. Now, so the underlying story is he got out because of the redemption. They don't want to, you know what I mean? They don't want to highlight it because it'll answer the question of everything. If I don't know, you know what I'm talking about when I say the redemption?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I got you.
All right. And remind you that coincides with what we're speaking about, the Constitution, about the legal system. If the redemption is true, then the legal system is a hoax.
Right.
It's all a hoax. It's all the centerpiece of the Redemption Center is what you call that fairy tale when we was little? The Wizard of Oz.
Right, okay.
Not what you call this shit with the rabbit down a hole and shit. Yeah, the Wizard of Oz. I always think about the black one, but yeah, the Wizard of Oz, the Tin Man and all that. So I don't know if that's the truth. They ain't gonna let it out because look how many years they had the truth. How many centuries you had truth hitting in books and et cetera, et cetera. Now we're on a different level now.
Right.
So I don't know. That's going somewhere else. But like to keep it well-rounded, like I said before, is just words. Communication, man. Communication and networking is everything, man. Like this is why I be on Clubhouse. Communication and networking, and if you got a way with words, you can get them, but you got to understand what you're doing. And like I said again, know the rules.
Right. Yeah, you got to take your time, break down each word, man. You know, that's something I do in the motions that I put together.
Yeah, and you can't. It can't be personal, like in no shape, form, or fashion. And I think I forgot. I don't know. Imani, somebody spoke on it. You can't be egotistical. You know what I mean? And of course, we all know it got to be a trust level.
Yes, sir.
So hey, I got a question about.
Go ahead, bro.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, bro. I was going after this. I'll change.
Hey, yeah. Just stop me if you guys covered it too. I missed some of the Diddy part. But Tommy, so I've heard or I kind of seen a headline. I didn't read too much into it about Diddy potentially losing his entire net worth asset. I'm not sure how they categorized it, but the word is that if he loses this RICO case, they might take away everything, including music catalog and all of that. Under what does that look like when the federal government is trying to? How are they even able to do that? I guess is my question.
Well, see, it's done in so many different ways. See, going back to something that the brother that said earlier, right? A trial, and what is going on is sometimes it's just an illusion. Okay, you're looking at one thing, but it's actually something else. And I'm just going to give you an example in P. Diddy's case. All right. By the time that this trial is over, it's going to cost him so much money, and he's going to lose so many of his contracts and endorsements that it can't help but to affect his entire life. You understand what I'm saying? It's already affecting the relationship that he's having with his kids. Do you understand what I'm saying? Sometimes you could win the case
100%,
but still lose the war, if you understand what I'm saying. You know where you've seen that at before too? Herb Gotti and Supreme and them. I don't know if you're familiar with that situation when they they arrested Irv Gotti and them, put them under RICO, saying that Supreme was supporting their organization with the money. Now Irv Gotti was found not guilty. You understand what I'm saying? But it still cost him so much money, his career and everything else. You understand what I'm saying? He fell off. He had to rebuild it all back up. You understand what I'm saying? And even though you would think that because Irv Gotti won his case, you would think that would have an effect on Supreme case to show that he wasn't supporting them like they were saying, and he wasn't paying financially. But at the same time, that gave the court system an obligation to freeze Supreme money that he had in the bank so that he couldn't afford to purchase an attorney to represent him adequately in his trial. You know, so it's such a big picture and the strategy behind these guys, man, as far as what they're trying to do is just like unbelievable. You know what I'm saying? It's unbelievable, you know.
It makes sense too, because initially it sounded to me as if though they were just gonna come like seize all of the asset, you know, on one day. But just hearing you talk through it though, it's more so just kind of the means to an end. Like if they're gonna exhaust it, and that in itself, hearing you talk seems like part of the play. It's
listen, know what it's like? It's like a smear a campaign.
Right.
Imagine nobody don't come out the blue and just want to have a confrontation with somebody. They drop little hints. Yo, boy ain't no good. Yeah, remember that? Remember he did this? Remember he did that? To let it lead up to something. You know how when you little, instead of a person that's coming still on you, you'll hit me, I hit him. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's a bitch way to go about it. But in a legal sense, they slander you first. You know what I mean? They can't you, break you down, and then go in for the kill.
Right. That's exactly what they do. It's
like listen. It's all a hoax. It's all a circus. It's all a trick. It's all entertainment. But you got to be hip to it. If you ain't hip, you're gonna lose.
Listen, this is what I tell people, right? In my class, right? When a person is going to trial, right? Now you have to listen to me. I'm not saying all lawyers are bad, all prosecutors are bad, all judges are bad. But this is one thing I learned from watching these court systems and the way they operate and stuff like that carefully, is that it reminds me of the movie of The Sting, when the guy was being manipulated by everybody. And the only one who didn't know what was going on was him. And sometimes that's the defendant in that seat. You understand what I'm saying? You sitting there, you watching or you listening to a lawyer say, well, I thought you said the client was light-skinned. My client is dark-skinned. I thought you said the client was 5'6". My client is 7. All of those factors, it sounds like the person is being challenging. And some defendants are saying, oh, yeah, man, my lawyer fought like hell for me, man. He told him I didn't have a tattoo. He told him I was light-skinned. I was 6. And all of those are not relevant elements of the crime. You understand what I'm saying? It doesn't matter how tall you are.
No, 100%. Because especially the trafficking aspect of that RICO, like what we're hearing on a day-to-day basis today, that's not what it sounds like. If you were to start from today and work backwards, I don't think anybody think this is a sex trafficking case. It sounds more like some marital dispute, divorce type shit. Just to kind of, but yeah, it's crazy, man. It makes sense.
Right. Well, look at it this way, right? In the 80s and 90s, right? You know, I include myself in there. Everybody was going to jail for drugs, super drug kingpins. I was convicted of a 848B. Okay. And that's when Prince, Supreme, you had so many other people, man. I can't even think of most of the names right now. We're all going in there for 848B. We were drug dealers on the street selling drugs and stuff, right? And that's because we was all out there, listen to me carefully, making a lot of money, and they couldn't control it and they couldn't stop it. Okay. And then they created all these laws and ran with the RICO law after John Gotti and his little crew and them had the little thing in New York when everybody was being killed on the streets and stuff. Then they used that in the drug game. And now what you see now is the people, listen to me carefully, in the music business that's making a lot of money, and they stopping them. Look at most of the big cases that's coming up now with RICOs and people facing life. Most of them are entertainers. You know, they're not going after the drug dealers on the streets anymore like they were doing before. They're taking away this massive income that these guys are making, or either they're making them give it back to the system by paying court fees, court fines, paying lawyers to represent them, and stuff like that, and so on.
No, you can see that. Like, if you look at Dirk's case too, a lot of the points you're making, those are talking about that case. It's almost, you know what I mean? That's crazy.
Yep.
So tell me, I know you said an hour. You know, we're approaching that hour. If you can explain Calvin's case, Calvin. You know, I just recently did an interview with him. It's about to drop probably in the next few days. And you know, with his case, I know he's trying to come home. For what I see from me interviewing him, it seems like that the government is basically, you know, exceeding his sentencing. It's like they excessive. It's excessive at that point. You know, he ain't done. Oh, it'll be 30 years, I think, in a few months. And they tried to offer him a deal, he said, which would have got him home in 30 years, but they wanted him to admit to a murder that he did not commit. So them not even having that murder on his case, and you know, him going to jail for what he went to jail for, it's like he's still locked up, man.
Right. Well, you see, in cases like Calvin cases, it goes a little bit about what the brother was talking about earlier about manipulating facts and manipulating words. And if you look at Diddy's case, Big U's case, Lil Durk's case, all of them are pretty much the same. They come out with 54 counts, 33 counts, and stuff like that. And some of these counts actually are based upon rumors without any proof or any evidence. And then what they want the individuals to do is they threaten them with a life sentence and hope that they plead guilty to these counts, okay, and hope that they take it and move on with their life. You know, you have a lot of times you get a lot of pressure from family members also, because you're telling your family, or the lawyer's telling your family, hey, he's facing a life sentence. The government's trying to give him 20 years. He needs to take that. And so the family, they love you. They want to see you home. So they're manipulating you. They don't care if you did the crime or not, man. Boy, take that. The government don't play. I'll never see you again if you go this trial and you lose trial, you know. But Calvin's case, I'm a little familiar with Calvin's case. I've been helping Calvin for a few years now. His case involves a lot of manipulation of facts, witnesses being threatened with life in jail, witnesses telling the story that the government want to hear, about who was killed, how they was killed, and stuff like that. But when you read the transcripts, these cases don't match up with the facts, if you understand what I'm saying. But more importantly than that, and that's what's overlooked a lot, is individuals like Calvin. I spent approximately 20 years in jail with Calvin. We both was in USP Lewisburg, and Calvin's an excellent guy. And Calvin is in the position where even if he did commit the crime, the efforts that he put towards rehabilitation, the efforts that he put to show that he's a changed individual and he's no longer the same person, should entitle him to a second chance. You know what I'm saying? No, I don't think nobody's under the ability to have a second chance in life for a mistake that they might have made or they didn't make, or what somebody might have lied about. You know, back then when Calvin and them went to jail, you had a lot of what they call ghost drugs, ghost murders and stuff that was going on, and people just don't understand it. You know, they listen to the rumors, for example, in Prince's case, he was charged with murdering 3 Dominicans for some drugs, right? But there was never a finding of the 3 bodies. There was never a report of no people being missing. It's just that the facts don't match up with the story. But here's a man who was arrested and was charged with these crimes and found not guilty of those crimes. But some of these things still haunt them today, and it's difficult for them to get back and to start and readjust a new life behind these rumors and stuff that some people still push. Some people push on their podcast to sell or make money to get more followers and listeners. And in Calvin's case, man, Calvin's an excellent kid. He's from DC. And if anybody's been in the prison system, they know in most cases you have problems from inmates from DC. But he's a totally different person. He was a person that stood up for a right, regardless of, he didn't play that hometown stuff. You know what I'm saying? If he felt that some of his homies was wrong, he stood up, he fought against it, he challenged, he always stayed on the side of right. this guy played basketball with everybody, from the white guys to the Spanish guys to Jamaicans. He just played with everybody, man. Handicap all of the guys who couldn't play. He played with the 5'7", and he was one of the top basketball players on the whole compound. But the guy just had a good attitude. He has a good heart, and you could tell from his character that he wasn't involved in that type of crime. He's not that type of person, and so on. But back in those days, what a lot of people don't realize, a lot of us was getting arrested not for what we did. We was being prosecuted not for what we did, but we was being prosecuted and arrested for what we might know. And so we were token, and the government might go in the neighborhood, say, for example, and arrest 10 people. And 7 out of those 10 people has nothing to do with anything. But they're hoping that 7 out of those 10 people could help them put the story together, help them put the puzzle together. And then they would know, or they would find out what happened. And those who didn't know, according to the government, they still deserve to be in jail because they're out on the streets doing nothing. They're hanging around with the wrong people. Well, you heard the expression, birds of the feather flock together. And so they believe that regardless of whether or not they didn't sell any drugs, they didn't possess any drugs, but they know the people who did it, and they didn't call the cops, they didn't tell, they didn't snitch, so they deserve to go to jail. And you have so many people that's incarcerated now for those type of crimes, And Calvin, like I said, he's a person that I know for a fact has been rehabilitating himself. I used to give some classes and programs. He used to attend my classes. He participated in my classes, and he also mentored a lot of individuals, help people to read, help people get a better understanding of their cases and stuff like that. He definitely deserved to be going back home with his family, in my opinion.
So like right now, everything is being filed, like far as motions and different things. And I know it's like a compassionate release, or
right.
Along the lines of what's going on with the new law that had passed. Can you speak on that?
Yeah. Well, see, Calvin, he filed the compassion release motion before, and we were able to get him a hearing. And in the hearing, what he did was like what most people would do. He tried to argue his innocence. He tried to tell the judge, "Hey, judge, I didn't do this. Please take your time, look at the records. Have some compassion and look at the records." And say, but the judge took the position, back to the word games. Oh, well, this is a compassion release motion. We're not here to fight your conviction and your sentence. If that's what you're here for, basically, I can't grant you relief. They're looking for a person. They're looking for a person who's going to accept and admit to the guilt. Then this way, the court system wins. And then okay, he admitted that he killed the guy. We just going to let him out. We believe he spent enough time in jail, but he didn't want to do that because he played no part in the actual murder. The drugs, maybe he has a little involvement there. The evidence shows that, but not the actual murder. And his position is that, listen, whatever it take, okay, if I did the drugs, you can give me 20 years, 30 years. I got that for that, but I'm not going to admit to a murder that I did not do. I'm not going to put that stain on my life. So we're getting ready to file another motion, and we're just going to basically take the position that we respect the jury's verdict, and it's time for him to move on with his life. You know what I'm saying? But we're still not going to admit to the murder. We're just going to say we respect the jury's verdict. Again, playing with word games,
Oh, that's something like an alpha plea, right?
Yeah, sort of like, but the difference is the plea component is over. Okay. In other words, what we're saying is, okay, like you're saying, is just like an alpha plea, but we're saying is that, okay, a jury entered a verdict for murder. Okay, we didn't commit a murder. We're not going to say we committed a murder, but we're going to say the 30 years that he spent in jail now is adequate enough time to serve the time, because you got now, under the data and the statistics and the new case law, the average time for doing a murder is 22 years to 30 years, depending on the facts of your case. We just did a case on Rosalie Garcia. I don't know if you guys are familiar with her, out of the Bronx, New York. she was featured on E&A, Most Notorious Crimes, and she was responsible for 3 murders. And we did a case with her. She had a life sentence, and we were able to get her home after like 27 years. So she's home now with her family. You know what I'm saying? But we did the similar to what you said. We said we respect the jury's verdict. We're looking to move on with our life. She's a changed individual. She's much older now. She's much wiser now. And she's been doing things. She's been taking classes and courses to rehabilitate herself. Mm.
No, I got you. So it is like a promising like that he could. It's looking good that he could get this compassionate.
He has a very good case of getting home. The thing is that we just got to get the judge to listen to him, and in my opinion, we just got to get Calvin to stay focused on stay away from arguing the murder because they don't want to hear it. They don't want to deal with the truth. You're dealing with a court system that, if I must say, in 2022, right, the federal government had a conviction rate of, I think it's 99.2%. That's higher than a DNA test. You understand what I'm saying? Now, you can't tell me that a man-made system is operating at that such high percentage. There got to be something wrong with that system. You know, and that's the threatening of all of these individuals of facing life sentences to make them tell stories, to manipulating the facts of the case and stuff like that, controlling what evidence is coming in, what evidence is not coming in, and stuff like that, and so on, you know. But in Calvin's case, regardless of the 99%, he's definitely an individual that I met. He's one of the very few people that I met in the federal system that I would take my hat off and say and sign my name to it, that he's entitled to a second chance, an opportunity. And I know he's going to ride the right track. It ain't no doubt in my mind about that. Mm. Mm.
No, I appreciate that, Tommy. Any last words you want to leave us with?
Nah, I'm saying, hope you call me back soon, you know what I'm saying, so I can go over some of the other things that you sent me, you wanted to talk about, you know what I'm saying. I apologize. My time is just a little short, and I didn't get a chance to go over some of the things that I wanted to go, because I just like to be on point with the facts and stuff like that, you know, and like to answer some questions. But hopefully next time the Supreme Team documentary will be out. Maybe we could talk about that, answer a couple of questions, and, you know, talk about his case a little bit.
No doubt. I actually probably like you said, in the next week or so, right before it drop, I do got that exclusive clip. I want to go over it with you. I'm about to take a week vacation off of work. Not this coming week, but the next week, and we can probably get that done before you know, that documentary actually drops.
Right. Okay. If I hear anything about it dropping any sooner, I'll let you know. I'll hit you up, and we'll go from there.
No, for sure, bro. Just let them know one more time where they can find you at.
Just Tommy Walker, secondchanceforreal.com. You know, we're on the website. You know, we also put a little chat box on the website, so if anybody have any legal questions, they can go to the website. And I think we sent you Big Chuck, I think we sent you a Q&A card. I don't know if Reg sent it to you.
I don't think so.
If you could put that up, you know, they can go right to the website on it, and if they got any legal questions, they can ask legal questions, and our little chat box to answer the legal questions. You know what I'm saying? If not, put the legal questions in the email at the end of the website, and we'll address it within a week.
Okay, no, yeah. Salute, brother. I appreciate you stopping through, man. We got Tommy Walker in the building, man. Peace and blessings.
Appreciate you.
No problem. Appreciate y'all questions, man, and y'all responses.
Peace, bro. Peace.
All right.